Hi beautiful people, welcome back to my channel Sew with Zini. My name is Ezini and I make tutorials around fashion, DIY and pattern drafting. Thank you to all my returning subscribers, and if this is your first time on my channel, please consider subscribing to my channel. On today's tutorial, I'll be teaching you guys how to draft the perfect bustier with yoke. So if this is what you'll be interested in, please do well to watch to the end. So here I'll be starting off by drawing a line on the top of my pattern. After that, I'll go ahead to mark my shoulder measurement. Now my shoulder measurement is 16 inches. Dividing it by 2 is going to give you 8 inches. So I'll go ahead and mark out half of my shoulder, which is 8 inches. After that, the next thing I'll be doing is to mark out my 3 inches standard neck width measurement. Now after I'm done doing that, the next thing I'll do is to come down by 1 inch from my shoulder measurement. I'll come down by 1 inch and then I'll mark it out. Now after I'm done doing that, the next thing will be to connect the lines from my shoulder down to my standard neck measurement. After that, the next thing will be to mark out our vertical measurement, starting with the bust line. So the bust line I'm using is 11 inches. I'll go ahead and mark out my 11 inches and then connect all the lines together. Now the next is my under bust measurement, which is 14 inches. I'll go ahead and mark it out. After marking it out, I'll connect all the dotted lines together. So after that, I'll move over to my half length measurement, which is 17.5 inches. I'll go ahead, mark it out. After marking it out, I'll also connect all the lines together as well. Now after I'm done, I'll go ahead and label them: my half length, my under bust. Sorry, I made a mistake here. I wrote my bust length instead of my under bust. So that is my under bust. Sorry, that is a mistake. My under bust, and then the next is my bust length measurement. So now the next will be to determine our chest line measurement. Okay, so you can either decide to go up by 2 inches from the bust line, or you can decide to divide your bust width measurement by 6 inches. Then whatever you get, you add it with 1.5 inches. Okay, when you divide your bust by 6 inches and then you add it by 1.5 inches. So either ways, any method that you wish to use, you still arrive at the same answer. Okay, so but here my chest line measurement is 8 inches. So I'm going to be marking that. If I decide to come up by 2 inches, is 8. If I also decide to use the other method, I'll still get 8 inches as my chest line measurement. Okay, so I'll go ahead and mark out my 8 inches from my shoulder slope. Okay, I marked out 8 inches from my shoulder slope. So I'll go ahead and connect this from my shoulder slope. So before I do that, I'll have to determine that they are the same. So I'll bring down my shoulder measurement. Okay, I'll bring it down so that I'll make sure that my line is straight. I'll bring it down and then I'll mark 8 inches. Then after marking it, making sure that they are going to be on the same line, and then I'll use my straight line. I'll mark a straight line upwards to my shoulder slope. So now that I've connected the lines together, the next thing will be to bring down my chest line measurement, mark it out and then connect it together. Now the next thing will be to divide my armhole line into 2 in order to get the armhole curve. So I'll be dividing my armhole line into 2. My armhole is 8, dividing by 2 will give us 4 inches. So I'll go ahead and mark that out, and then from that place that I've divided, I'll go in by 3/4 of an inch and then mark. You can as well decide to go in by 1/2 inch, and that is still fine. The next thing is to go ahead and mark out my bust measurement. So my bust measurement is 40, divided by 4 will give you 10 inches. So I've already marked out my 10 inches. Now the next will be to connect these 3 lines together using my French curve. So now the next thing I'll be doing is to go ahead and mark out my bust span measurement, which can also be known as nipple to nipple. I'll start with my bust line. Okay, so that is 4 inches. My nipple to nipple measurement is 8 inches. Divided by 2 will give us 4. So I've marked out my 4 inches. I'll go ahead and connect all these lines together from my bust to my under bust and my half length measurement. The next thing will be to mark out our darts. On the left side of the under bust, I'm going to go ahead and mark out 3/4 of an inch. So depending on the size of the person's bust, that is what will determine the dart. So you can go ahead and mark out 1/2 inch. You can go ahead and mark out 3/4. You can even go ahead and mark out 1 inch. It is all depending on the size of the bust. Okay, so I'll go ahead and connect it from my under bust to my half length. Now on the right side, I'll go ahead and mark out 1.5 inches. Some people even go ahead to mark out up to 2 inches. If the person is very busty, you can go ahead and mark out 2 inches. Okay, but for the sake of this video, I'm going to be making use of 1.5 inches. So I'll go ahead and connect it with my ruler. Now on the bust line, I'll come down by 1/2 inch and mark. From the 1/2 inch I marked, I'll use my curved ruler and make a slight curve from there to my under bust measurement. So I'll also do the same thing to the right side of the pattern. Now the next thing I'll be doing is to determine the midpoint of my shoulder slope. My shoulder slope is 5 inches, the midpoint is 2.5. So I'll go ahead, determine the midpoint and mark it out. So after that, I'll go ahead and connect the line straight to my bust line measurement. So moving ahead, I'll go ahead to draw the type of neckline I want. I'll first and sketch it out with my pencil to avoid any mistake before I'll move ahead with my marker. Okay, so I'm going to be drawing a sweetheart neckline, but I don't want it to be too deep so that it doesn't get difficult when I'm trying to sew it. So I'll just go ahead and make a quick sketch of my sweetheart neckline, and then after that I'll use my marker and make it more bold. So after taking it with my marker, the next thing will be to determine the dart. Okay, so I'll be removing 1 inch dart on the both sides. Okay, so you can leave 1/2 inch, you can leave 3/4 of an inch, you can leave 1. This is all depending on you, but for the purpose of this dress, I'm going to be making use of 1 inch. Okay, so from the bust line as well, I'll go up by 1/2 inch. This is just to make the bust area more relaxed and for it not to be too tight when you're sewing it. So with my curved ruler, I'll go ahead and connect it straight to the bust line. Okay, so I'll make a curve and then I'll connect them together. Now I'll have to replace the dart that I took out on the pattern. If not, our dress is going to shorten, so it is very important to replace the dart that you took out. So here we took out 2 inches and we are going to replace the 2 inches. Okay, now I know that some people will go ahead and replace these 2 inches on their chest line, but I will not be doing that. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and extend my line just on my armhole. I'll extend it. That is where I'm going to replace my 2 inches, and then I'll make that line. Okay, just as you see me doing, exactly as you see me doing, that is how I'm going to extend it. And then from there, I'll go ahead and then make a curve. I'll also put back the darts that I removed from here, just as you see. This is almost 1 inch, so I'm going to be replacing that on the chest line. So now after I've marked it, I'll go ahead and make a slant curve from there to the chest line. So this will become our new armhole. After I've replaced my dart, the next thing I'll be doing is to mark out my sewing allowance, which is 1.5 inches. Now for the waist area, my waist is 35 divided by 4, which is going to give you 8.5. So I'll go ahead and mark out this 8.5, and then I'll measure out the dart that I've removed from the waistline. So I'll go ahead and replace it back on my waist. Now I'll replace it back and mark it out. After I've marked it out, the next thing will be to add my 1.5 inches sewing allowance. And after I've marked that, I'll now go ahead and connect it to my chest line, just as you see me doing in the video. So now the next thing I'll be doing is to determine the neckline for the yoke. Okay, so if you can still remember, I said this dress is going to be having a yoke. So I'm using 5 inches for my neck depth, so I'll go ahead and mark it out. Now after I've marked it out, I'll go ahead and connect it back to the 3 inches standard neck measurement that we took out in the beginning. So this now becomes my neckline for the yoke. So I'll go ahead and label my yoke, my center front, and my side front. So I just realized that when I was measuring measuring out my neck depth, the camera didn't cover it fully, so I'll go ahead and take it back again. Now I went ahead to measure out 4 inches as the neck width that I would like my yoke to have, and then I marked it out. I also went down from the beginning of my pattern to measure out 5 inches for my neck depth and mark that out. After I'm done, I connected them together. So that was how our neckline for the yoke came about. So I went ahead to thicken my bust point area so that it doesn't get confusing when I'm cutting it. So now I'll just go ahead and cut out my pattern. Yes, this is what we have as our front pattern. The next will be to move over to our back pattern. So for our back, we'll go ahead and rule a line at the beginning of our pattern just like we did for the front. Okay, so we'll repeat the same process again. So now the next thing I'll be doing is to mark out my zip allowance, okay, because this is the back, so we have a zipper, and I'll be marking out my zipper allowance, which is 1.5 inches. I'll go ahead and mark it out and then rule a line across it. So afterwards, all my measurements will have to start from the zipper line, okay? So now I'll go ahead and mark out half of my shoulder measurement, which is 8 inches. After I've done that, I'll mark out my standard 3 inches neck width measurement. So this is basically almost the same process I went through with the front pattern. Okay, so I'll come down by 1 inch from my shoulder and then extend it to my 3 inches line. Okay, so I'll go ahead and mark out my chest line, which is 9 inches from the shoulder. Okay, so after I've marked that out, I'll go ahead and mark my waist, because our back does not need any bust point or bust line, so we don't need to mark that out. So I'll just mark only my waist. It will be needing only your waist and your chest line. After I'm done marking that out, I'll go ahead and bring down my O line, mark, and then I'll connect it back to my shoulder slope. So we'll repeat the same process with the front again. I'll go ahead and get the midpoint of my armhole, which is 4. I'll mark that and then come in by 3/4 of an inch, and then I'll go ahead and mark out my bust measurement as well, which is 40 divided by 4, which will give me 10, and then I'll go ahead and connect all these lines together to make my armhole curve. Now I'll go ahead and mark out half of my nipple to nipple measurement on my bust span, which is 4 inches. I'll mark this on my waistline, and then I'll go ahead as well and mark it out on my chest line. Then I'll connect them together. Now for my dart, I'll go ahead and remove half of an inch on both sides of the line that I drew. Okay, so on the left side I'll remove half of an inch, and on the right side I'll remove half of an inch. So I'll go ahead and connect this line back to the chest line, exactly the same way you see me doing in the video. Now the next thing I'll be doing here is to sketch out the type of design that I want the back of my yoke to have. Okay, so I'll first undo that with my pencil. After that, I'll thicken it with my marker so that if I make any mistake, I can easily clean it and correct it. So I'll just have to sketch it out. You can do any type of design you want. You can make a curve, you can make a slant, you can even make a straight line. Anything you want to do at all, it's just totally up to you. So after much deliberation, I decided I'll be making a slanted line with my ruler. So there's no special measurement for this. You can just do whatever you feel like doing. Okay, so there's no special measurement for it. So now for your neck width, you have to make sure that it is the same neck width with the front. Okay, it cannot be a different neck width, so it has to be the same. So I went ahead to mark out my 4 inches neck width, which is the same as the front. Now for the neck depth, you can decide to do anything you want or use any number of inches that you want. At least from 1 to 5 is okay. So the neck depth I used for the back is 2.5 inches, which is okay by me because that is the type of depth I want it to have. Go ahead, mark that out, and after I'm done, I'll have to connect it back to my neck width, okay, using my curved ruler. The next will be to impute our sewing allowance, which is 1.5 inches. So I'll go ahead and mark this out. And now for the waist, I'll go ahead and mark out my waist measurement. Then I'll impute the dart that I removed, that is 1/2 inch on both sides, which is 1 inch. I'll mark it out, and then I'll go ahead and put my sewing allowance again, which is 1.5 inches. After that, I'll go ahead and connect these two together. Now on my zipper allowance for my yoke, I'll go ahead and make a horizontal line. Okay, so this is where my zip is going to be starting from. Also the same thing for the downside of the yoke as well. So this is important. You don't need to slant the line. This is how it should be. Okay, it should be this way, just as I have done in the video. It shouldn't be slanted. So yes, this is the back yoke, and then the other part is the main fabric, the center back and the side back. As you can see, I've labeled them. So the next thing I'll be doing now is to cut it out. So yes, this is it. I'm done cutting it, and this is how it looks like. Now please, when you're cutting this on the fabric, remember to put sewing allowance on the dart area so that you can use it to join it. Also, you put sewing allowance to join the yoke and the main fabric. Okay, so 1/2 inch sewing allowance is good, is okay. So you also do the same thing for the front pattern. Add 1/2 inch on both the center front and the side front to sew it together. So we have come to the end of today's tutorial, and if you enjoyed this video with me, please do not forget to give it a thumbs up, comment, share, and turn on your notification bells in order to get notified whenever I post subsequent videos. Bye, and see you in my next video.